People now expect brands and companies to play their part in tackling climate change, and with the Advertising Association's Ad Net Zero initiative, the media industry is on a collective mission to be carbon neutral by 2030. Media brands and agencies are approaching this in several ways, from planning and buying through to final production and everything in between. It's a subject that we're very passionate about here at Mindshare, so I'm really looking forward to this next conversation about the challenges we face and how much difference we're really making. I'll hand over to Steve Ray, our Head of Planning, to introduce his guests from Mindshare, Clear Channel and Good Loop.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining this panel on green media. So the last panel of the day, last session of the day. And I am delighted to be joined by my panellists. So we've got Claire Leeson-Glandry from Group M Partnerships at Good Loop. We've got Mark Smith, UK Sales Director at Clear Channel, and Lucy Molchanok from Mindshare in my own planning team. And I think there's been a lot of positive initiatives that the industry has undertaken, and what we're going to talk about today is where we're going next. So I think to start off with, what we've seen actually, turning to the panel, is that green media is not just something that we feel we should be doing, it's something that consumers are demanding of us. And actually, in undertaking the research for trends, we found that I think 50% of people agreed with the statement that media brands should take an active stance on big issues in society. So if I can come to you first, Lucy, on this one, what are clients asking of us in terms of how we plan and buy media?
Yeah, sure. So I think first of all, I do agree with that. I think it is really important that, both advertisers and media owners are taking a stance on the big issues, but I think it's really important that it feels authentic, because I think that, and we'll come on to talk about greenwashing, but I think consumers and other advertisers are very quick to call out when they see kind of greenwashing. So I think it needs to feel genuine. At Mindshare, we're kind of positioned to help clients grow in responsible and sustainable ways. And so, this is something that we're talking about every day. And we have an initiative called Change the Brief, which is a really positive kind of action-led initiative where, we're thinking about what the future brief might be. So how can we get our audiences starting to do behaviours that will drive really positive change as a result of our campaign, and that might be leading on to really kind of positive actions in 5 or 10 years time, but it's starting to do things now and it's starting to make those changes in our campaigns now. So I think it's different for every client, but every brief that we get should be an opportunity for us to think about what we can do to make really sustainable change.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think what's interesting about the whole greenwashing thing is that we've seen plenty of examples, I think, where brands have got it right, but we've also seen plenty of examples where brands have got it wrong. And there was an example, I think, last year that was highlighted where a number of fashion retailers were promoting clothes made from sort of plastic recycled bottles. They were making synthetic fabrics from those, which on the face of it seemed like a really green initiative, but a sort of investigation into that highlighted the fact that actually at the end of their life cycle, those clothes would end up in landfill. So actually what appeared to be a green initiative wasn't. And although of course that was well intended on the part of those brands, it didn't end up doing good. So I think it's, as we say, consumers are very aware of this stuff. And of course, from a brand perspective, they need to think about, certainly when it comes to products, that they're thinking all the way through the life cycle of that product, including what happens at the end of life of that product as well.
I think authenticity, as you said, is completely key in all of this. For us at Good Loop, we very much feel that media and where your budget goes is the final frontier when it comes to walking the talk. And brands are brilliant at launching initiatives that rid the ocean of plastic, and then there's no follow through, or there's a failure to follow through. So we're very much focused on making sure that your media investment and the publications that you choose to support and where you put your media investment is completely sympathetic to what you're trying to say. Otherwise, as you say, consumers will be super quick to point that out. And I guess accusations of greenwashing come mostly when, a brand does their one sustainable campaign a year, tick. And actually, if it becomes an inherent practice as a brand, and this doesn't have to be conveyed in your creative or in everything, but quietly in the background, making sure that you're doing the right thing, consumers will be less likely to call foul on those kind of things if it is authentic.
Cool, thank you. I'm going to come back to that point actually shortly around getting the media aligned to your ambitions. Question initially though to you, Mark, which is we're actually seeing a lot of innovation in the ad space around the technology and the formats that sit behind delivery of content. What's the out-of-home industry doing in that space? What Clear Channel up to, and maybe what can we learn, and how does that inform other channels?
Well, I think what's interesting about the medium that I work in is it's a physical medium. It's based in the real world, and we're an advertising company at Clear Channel, but we're also very much an infrastructure company, which means we work with councils and communities up and down the country to provide them with street furniture. And with that comes quite a lot of responsibility. And for a long time in our business, and I'm talking 20 years or more, the whole theme of trying to be sustainable, trying to do some good has been a big part of our business. And we talk about our ad platform being a great platform for brands, but we also want everything that we build to try and do some good. And a lot of that good can be done through sustainable initiatives and green initiatives that help those products be more than just great ad sites. So some of the things that we've been doing recently is on our bus shelters, we've been launching sort of bee bus stops. So these are sort of biodiverse living roofs that sit on the top of the shelters. And we've launched those in several cities across the UK, Leicester, Cardiff, Brighton and several others. And they are there to kind of encourage wildlife in urban areas. And that is using essentially an unused space on our shelters before. And that's going down really well, and we're hoping, we've got about 30 in the ground so far, we're hoping to triple that this year and roll that out into the thousands in the coming years. We've got a similar initiative on our billboards that's kind of called Vertical Meadows, which is about using that space under billboards to create something that's kind of biodiverse, that again encourages wildlife. And then of course we could look to other markets within the Clear Channel network for what they're doing. And one of the things that stood out for me is what we're doing in Barcelona in Spain, which is we've got units there now in their early stages, will essentially suck in pollution from urban areas, clean and filter the air, and then pump it back out again. And that's something we'd be looking to bring to the UK in the future. But we haven't just left it there. We've also thought about our classic estate, and we've been doing just quite simple but significant tasks, like changing all the bulbs in our ad units to LED bulbs, low energy bulbs. And by doing that, we can reduce the emissions of that site and the amount of power it uses by about 60%. I mean, we already use renewable energy as a company, but there's always more we can do in that space. And going back to that point earlier on, these for us are very long-term initiatives. The life of our products, might be 5, 10, 20 years. So of course, these initiatives that we're in for the long term. And I think that's something to think about in terms of how we're working with brands in this space. These aren't stunts, these are or one-off PR events that are very much the long term. So I think a huge opportunity for brands to get involved and work with media owners and channels that are trying to do some good in this space.
Cool, thanks. It helps as a planner to know that where you're investing your money at least is having that positive impact, and that comes back to that point I think you're making, Claire, around that we're walking the talk and making sure that media is representative of your climate ambitions. So we've actually seen Group M, for example, built a carbon calculator. I know that we have similar conversations with you around a green ad tag, for example. I think that's an interesting area. I'd like to pick up on that. I think Lucy as well, from Mindshare's perspective, how we're using a carbon calculator, and then maybe I'll come to you, Claire, and you can talk about what's going on at Goodloop.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, the carbon calculator that we've got now from Group M is great at kind of giving an overview across all channels and showing that, within the plans that we have, where we're creating the most carbon emissions and what we need to do to offset that. So I think that's a really great starting point at, you know, both making us aware of like what we're actually emitting into the environment, but also what we can do about it. And I think that will only become more useful the more kind of developed the tool is, and you know, hopefully in years to come, the more granular detail we can go into. So rather than just looking at kind of top line channels, being able to look at you know, more specific details within that. So whether that's vendor or, you know, we can already look at a lot of format detail, but being able to go even further into that detail and look at multiple formats. Or, you know, not just offsetting, but what we can do in our media planning to actually reduce the carbon impact that we're having. So I think, you know, there's loads of exciting stuff that, you know, hopefully we'll be able to do in years to come with the calculator as well. And I think that, you know, reports like the AdNet Zero report and the work that IPA have done is just so fundamental in making sure that it's really cross-industry. It's not just Group M who are talking about it, or it's not just, you know, one or two agencies. You know, people kind of across the whole industry are talking about this, and I think that's when we'll see real change, is when we're on report calls and clients are asking about carbon emissions in the same way they're asking about click-through rates, or, you know, whatever metric it is that they're looking at. But I think that's when we'll see, yeah, that's when there's going to be kind of real change.
So yeah, the green ad tag that we've developed is designed to sort of sit alongside agency carbon calculators, and certainly there's been a huge upswing in those being developed, and we developed ours because we offset all of our campaigns anyway, and so we thought this would be a really nice solution for brands to just have a floodlight basically on what they're doing and the impact that their campaign is having. And, you know, as an industry, and certainly as a company, all we can be responsible for is the data transmission between ad server and the publisher's website. So our green ad tag, it's super simple. It's like a viewability tag, but for the planet. And what it does in real time is measures the weight and the energy transmission and the surrounding ad tech of your tag. And then for every 1,000 impressions that we measure, not only do you get carbon credits, certified carbon credits, but you will also plant a tree. So we're not just sort of offsetting. We liken it to, you know, drinking 7 pints and then the next day having a green smoothie. The damage has been done, but at least you can try and neutralise the effects. So not only are we doing that with the carbon credits, but also planting a tree so future generations can benefit. But this isn't about sort of castigating people and hitting them over the head and saying you're doing the wrong thing right now. It's about helping brands do the right thing for tomorrow. And there are loads of different things that you can do right now, even this afternoon, you know, whether that's, you know, taking a view on the video assets that you're using. If you're delivering your campaign majoritively to mobile handsets, do you need to use a high definition video? Probably not. You've already shaved off 20% off the weight of your file. There are so many, you know, time of day will always come into it, but there are so many different metrics there, and you shouldn't trade out your performance metrics in pursuit of this. They can coalesce and sit next to each other. You know, MPU serving at 3 a.m. in the morning are definitely going to have a lower carbon footprint than, say, video at 5 in the afternoon, but your campaign still needs to work, right? So our green ad tag is just basically a way of collating that information in order to inform your future planning as well, so that over time you see a downward curve happening on your dashboard. So, cool. Yeah, it's pretty simple as well, which is good.
I think the reason you're able to lead in that space and have credibility is because you've built yourself as an organisation that's been born out of social responsibility. What can our audience learn from a business that's done that? Yeah,
so Good Loop's a B corporation, and sort of doing the right by society and by the planet is inherent for us. It's, you know, very much sort of the values of the organisation, and so we've always offset everything. As I said, we've offset our campaigns, we've offset our flights when we could do them. Our servers are run on renewable energy. So we've always, you know, had that really minimal footprint, but I'm not saying you have to become a B corporation in order to operate in this space. There's you know, legitimacy in everyone making that first step, and you don't have to go through the very arduous task of getting certified as a B Corporation. You know, there's lots that companies can do right now. So yeah, it is inherent for us, and the past year or two has probably been a bit easier for us to navigate because we're not retrofitting, you know, a 200-year-old business or something like that. But so we've been able to be really, really agile, but we also have the knowledge and the tools already inbuilt for us to be able to explore this area and develop products like this.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, obviously, I suppose we've got the sort of other end of the scale, a much more established business in the marketplace, and we trace our roots back to about 1937. But I think it's also possible to change, you know, and it's also possible to make headway in that area. I mean, as I said earlier on, it's not a new thing in our business, probably because the councils we work with have always demanded it for quite a few years. So I think what we've tried to do is do anything to reduce our emissions. We've kind of halved that, I think, since 2008 across our business, which is no mean feat considering so much of our business is a physical business. We've looked at initiatives where we can really work in other ways to do more sustainable projects, like we now use a lot less water when we clean our shelters, when we maintain our plant, and we capture all that rainwater at our depots. So we've reduced that by about 80%. And we're now in a place, as of last year, where we're carbon neutral. The long-term plan, of course, is to become net zero, and of course, in the future, carbon negative is our long-term goal. And of course, it's not just us doing that in out of home. There's many companies in our sector that are doing that alongside us. So I think you can do it as a new business, but also as an established business. You know, if you make it part of your DNA.
Sure. A lot of what we've talked about so far has been what we as an industry can do with our own operations and processes to make a positive impact on the environment. But equally, we work in an industry that has the power to influence people. So Mindshare's changed the brief. You touched on that earlier. Lucy is now an industry-wide call to action to think about the impact that we can have. What are you doing at the moment in this space at Mindshare that looks at change the brief and how we're working to have an impact on people?
Yeah, so I think there are loads of campaigns that we've run kind of using that initiative. So one of my favourites that I worked on a couple of years ago, so it was pre-COVID, which feels like a lifetime ago now, but was for Comfort fabric conditioner. And the message for that campaign was all about the better you care for your clothes, the longer they'll last. And so, you know, the more wear you'll get out of them, and combating fast fashion. So obviously, you know, really great kind of sustainable message already. So what we wanted to do with Change the Brief was try and drive kind of interaction with that message from our audience and try and kind of drive some behaviour change from that. And so we partnered, as part of our campaign, we partnered with Hearst fashion brands, Elle and Cosmo, and Oxfam, and we set up a swap shop where our audience could come in and bring, you know, a pre-loved item of clothing and swap it with someone else. So, you know, like you would borrow a top from your friend or your sister. And it was really successful. We had loads of people engage with it, and it just got people to really engage in that behaviour rather than, you know, just seeing the message, which is obviously impactful. But I think really like helping to drive that behaviour was what kind of pushed it a little bit further. And so, you know, I think that's just one example of a campaign that we've done that delivered both on the business results, but also kind of got that engagement with the more kind of eco-friendly message. So that's kind of one example, but you know, there's loads of work just on Unilever. Like Hellmann's also ran a great purpose campaign last year around like reducing food waste. So I think this is an area where we're continuing to just run more and more campaigns that are driving positive growth and positive change.
Cool, thank you. I'm afraid that is actually all we've got time for in cliched fashion. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you've taken out of that from our panellists, and thank you very much all of you for joining us. Some inspiration or some ideas on what we could do in 2022 to advance this green media trend a little bit further. So thank you, and over to Sophie to wrap up.